Every night, she stood a little closer to my bed. The first time I thought I was dreaming. By the third night, I knew I wasn't. Her eyes were wide open, and she wasn't blinking, just staring, breathing, watching. One night, I pretended to sleep, and that's when I saw the knife in her hand. I narrowly escaped being murdered by my psychotic roommate. I'm a 36-year-old woman living in Sweden, and I've spent the last 18 years working in mental health care. For 9 of those years, I was employed at a group home where I became especially close with my coworkers, particularly 2 women I worked alongside during my final years there. Eventually, another woman joined our team. Let's call her M. The 4 of us quickly formed a tight-knit bond. Though M was quiet and reserved at first, we got along really well. Despite her frequent sick days, mostly due to her personal mental health struggles, she'd often still join us outside of work. One day, she confided in us that she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, the same illness many of our patients dealt with. She reassured us, though, that her condition was under control thanks to medication, and she hadn't experienced a psychotic episode in years. In the summer of 2023, I moved on to work at a new place, this time doing forensic psychiatry. The 4 of us stayed in touch. One day, M told us she had been evicted from her apartment because of an incident where she had accidentally entered her neighbor's apartment in the middle of the night. She explained that in the massive apartment complex she'd been living in, all the doors looked identical, and she'd mistakenly walked into the wrong one. The residents called the police on her, which ultimately led to her eviction. That struck me as an extreme reaction. I asked her if there was more to the story, but she insisted that was it, just a simple mistake blown out of proportion. In Sweden, once you've been evicted, finding a new apartment contract is nearly impossible. So M asked if she could stay with me. She had nowhere else to go. She was quite literally homeless. Out of sympathy, and maybe guilt, I agreed. At the time, I was living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment with my 2 cats. We figured M could crash in the living room, and she said she didn't mind sleeping on the couch. To give her a bit of privacy, I hung a curtain over the hallway entrance. She wasn't working anymore, but I still was, and I had to get up at 6 a.m. most mornings. I suffer from intense insomnia, and even with sleep meds, I'm a light sleeper. I gently asked her to keep things quiet on the nights I had to wake up early. But the very first night she stayed over, M was in and out of the apartment several times to smoke. Each time, I jolted awake. At 5 a.m., she started making coffee, and since it's literally outside my bedroom door, I was wide awake from the sounds of it. I asked her in the nicest way possible why she was up this early, like if she had any plans today, as she just said that she couldn't sleep. I gently reminded her I would appreciate it if she could wait on making the coffee until I was out of bed. Adding to why I need my sleep is that I have epilepsy that gets worse when I don't get enough sleep. I knew that I would probably get seizures at work now, meaning that this day would be both stressful and potentially dangerous. She said that she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes, but that she would try to wait the next time I have to work. I accepted it and went on with my day. But things didn't get better. She continued to wake me up early in the morning while promising she would stop. Even when I told her that the loss of sleep was literally severely affecting my health, she'd never respected that boundary. Not only was she disturbing my sleep, but she constantly ate through all my food. She always apologized, but it was getting expensive, and it would really ruin my mood when the thing I was looking forward to eating all day was gone. Another thing, Em had a long black hair that got everywhere, all over the sink, the floor, the bathtub, everywhere. She also left her fingernails and toenails on the bathroom floor. There were even drops of urine on the toilet seat every time she had been to the toilet. At first, I didn't want to say anything straight out, so I just put a broom and dustpan in the bathroom to imply that we needed to sweep the floor more often. This didn't seem to work, and after a while, I did have to mention it. Em promised to help out, but nothing ever changed. After a few weeks of living together, I started dating someone. He was also in a roommate situation, so we had a tough time getting any alone time. I asked Em if we could get one night to ourselves every now and then. She claimed she had nowhere to go, no friends or family. I was just asking for a few hours so we could get some quality time together. She could just go to the library or take a walk or whatever, but she still got offended by the suggestion. At dinner together one night, one of our old co-workers realized that the situation was really tearing at my mood. She offered that Emma could stay the night at her place. Emma made a huge deal about it, but she eventually accepted it when I offered to trade it for a night to herself in the apartment the next week. When I came home, the morning from my night away, I saw that my cat's water bowl was completely dried out. There was no spill on the floor, and I had filled it to the brim the night before. I asked her how this was possible, but she said that the cats must have tipped it. My cats are overly social and usually cuddle up with strangers after just a few minutes, but I noticed that the cats withdrew from her more and more over time. And the last couple of weeks, they never left my bedroom except when they ate or used the litter box. Aside from that, I had this old saucepan from the 60s that meant a lot to me. It was my grandmother's, and the only thing I have from her. Em burnt it one day and made no attempt to clean it. She just left it on the stove and went out to smoke. I found it ruined and cried. She didn't even apologize. It had probably been 2 months now, and she kept waking me up at night, kept binge eating my food. Never cleaned, never left the house, scared my cats, and ruined my things. She even stole my prescription sleeping pills. Lots of them, and I only get one per night. I had 20 of them in my nightstand when I left for work, and when I came home, they were gone. She denied it, which is pretty hilarious, since no one else could have been there. My frustration was getting heavy. The summer heat was strong, and I felt locked up in my tiny bedroom with my 2 cats, while everything just kept building up. Then my old classmate texted me on Facebook, asking me how I know Em, when he saw I had posted on Facebook that we were roommates. Now I told him that we were old co-workers and that she needed a place to stay because she got evicted. He asked if I understood why, and I told him what I knew, but he said that wasn't the full story. In reality, Em broke in and snuck up to their sleeping baby with a knife in her hand. Luckily, the father woke up in time and wrestled her to the floor. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't want to believe it, but my friend had the full police report. It seemed that Em had a psychosis episode during the break-in, but those parts weren't public. It was, however, clear to me that she had been lying to me about what had happened, including her mental stability. I started getting quite paranoid now and wanted her to move out. We did, however, have a contract that she had 30 days' notice. I knew that if I asked her in a harsh way, it would mean 30 days of chaos until she moved out. So I wanted to handle this as nicely as I could. I sat her down and broke the news to her as respectfully and lovingly as I could, but she still looked crushed. I showed her a hostel I found and said that I understood it wasn't the ultimate situation, but I really needed her to move out because I felt suffocated. She said she was going to try to move out, but not until 30 days had passed, so I had to agree to that. The consequences came quickly. The first night after our talk, she got up and made her coffee at 2:30 a.m. I nearly had a mental breakdown because I couldn't fall back asleep. I asked her in the morning for probably the 10th time not to make coffee until I got up, but she didn't even answer me. She just sat on the couch and stared out the window. I called her name several times, but she kept staring. I got freaked out and just left for work. M's annoying behavior persisted and got increasingly worse, but I couldn't stop thinking about the incident with the baby and the knife. I eventually got so pissed off about being woken up by the coffee maker that I unplugged it and locked it in my car. It may be childish, but I was starting to feel I was going crazy. The very next night, I woke up at 4 a.m. by her making coffee in a saucepan. I tried talking to her again, explaining the situation, but she just stared and didn't reply. Me being frustrated and at my tipping point, I later took the saucepan and stored it in my car as well. The third night, I had the guy I was dating sleeping at our place because I was getting really paranoid over her weird behavior. I woke up from my very light snooze by him poking me and whispering at me to look at something in the doorway. M was standing silently, staring at us. It was like a scene from a horror movie with her long, black hair over her face. I sat up and asked what she was doing, but before I could finish the sentence, she slammed the door shut. A moment later, I heard the sound of something metal falling on the floor and her running into the living room. I yelled at her to leave and started crying hysterically because this was turning into a nightmare. I couldn't go back to sleep though. I was really grateful that I had company that night. I just kept asking myself, had she done this before? The next day when I got out of bed, I went out into the hallway and saw a kitchen knife on the floor. That was the metal sound I had heard before she ran off. I took all my knives and locked them in my car. I asked a friend of mine to come to my house and be here when I tell Em that she has to move out immediately. During the conversation, I tried to stay calm. I know she has a mental illness, and I know she means no harm. Even though I was so frustrated, I couldn't hate her. I was mostly scared and tired. M, however, didn't even answer when I talked to her. She just kept staring out the window. She left the apartment and sent me a text instead, saying that I was disrespectful for bringing a friend over to her place. Nighttime came, and I thought this would be a quiet night finally. But at 3 a.m., I was woken up by her burning dry coffee powder in a frying pan. At this moment, I just felt terrified of her. Her face was dead. Her eyes were black. I suspected that she had gone into psychosis. I put out the fire, and she just ran off to the living room in silence. I knew she had an appointment with her psychiatrist the next day, so while she was away, I packed all her things. Then I sent her a text, telling her that she needs to pick them up and give me my keys back, and that I will give her money for a hostel the upcoming 26 days. She didn't reply. The guy I was seeing came to keep me company in case she would fight about it. Thankfully, she didn't. She gave us the keys without looking at us and left. Our old co-workers told me she moved in with a guy she was dating, and as she stayed there for a few weeks, until she somehow amazingly got an apartment of her own. Em even started working again, and I was really happy to hear this then in January. One of our old co-workers told me Em had called her and told her that everything must burn, that she has a baby she must save, and other delusional stuff. Her co-worker called to get her help, but they hadn't taken it seriously. Em then proceeded to burn her entire apartment down because the voices in her head were telling her that she had to burn everything. Her neighbors tried to rescue her from the fire, but she fought them off and ran back in and poured liquor on the fire to make it burn more. She was arrested and sentenced last week for aggravated arson. She will serve her time in a mental institution for a long time, possibly forever. What's ironic is that she will probably be in the facility where I used to work and end up where she used to work herself. My old co-worker was a witness at the trial. Apparently, Em had stopped taking her medication because she thought that it made her feel numb, and she thought she was stable enough to function without it. Apparently not. She had also stopped taking her medication the last few weeks when she stayed at my house. So those moments when she stared blankly into space, she was going into psychosis when she burned the frying pan that last night, and when she stared at me with the knife in her hand. It's disturbing to think about what would have happened to me and my cats if she stayed, or if I were a heavy sleeper. I also think about what would have happened to the baby in that apartment before she was evicted. The darkness I saw in her eyes in those final days is something I will never forget. But first, did you know that 98% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed? That means you. And yes, I am speaking specifically to you. Probably aren't. So now would be a great time to leave a like on the video and subscribe. Anyhow, this happened back in November of 2017, when I had just turned 18. I'm incredibly petite, barely 4 feet 10 inches, and painfully anxious. Even the slightest negative glance can set me off, so as you can probably guess, I avoid confrontation at all costs. That day, my friend and I were out on one of our rare shopping trips. We only got to do it once every few months because of college. But it was our way of staying close. She's just like me, quiet, sweet, barely 5 feet 1 inch, and equally allergic to confrontation. That's probably what brought us together in the first place. As with most of our shopping days, we eventually made our way into Ann Summers. It had become a regular stop for us. We're both, let's say, generously proportioned up top, and it was one of the few places we could find bras that actually fit, especially when they were on sale. Up until that point, everything had been completely normal. But as soon as I stepped through the entrance, something felt off. A woman with a thick Slavic accent immediately blocked my path. Without hesitation, she jabbed her finger into my chest and snapped, "Spit the gum out." Assuming that she was an employee, I gave a very sheepish, "I'm really sorry," and ran out of the shop to spit the gum out and throw it away. When I went back in, I realized that this woman was not an employee. She was a customer who was browsing and happened to be near the door when my friend and I entered the shop. It should have been obvious to me at the time. No salesperson would ever behave like that, not one that wanted to keep their job anyways. But I kept my head down when I walked past her, holding my breath in hopes that she wouldn't notice me again. And she didn't, and I thought I was in the clear. My friend and I browsed the shop, trying to avoid the woman, but the shop wasn't very big, probably only 15 feet by 18 feet. So eventually, I ended up at the sales stand by the door where she had been stood. I tried to keep my distance while browsing. I was looking at the price tags, but realized that I didn't know what the discount was, so I leaned over slightly to check the discount sign. It's important that I note that this woman had a pushchair, which is a stroller for the Americans, and you'd think that she'd maybe had a child in this pushchair. But no, it was full of plastic carrier bags. I didn't look too much at it, but I could tell that everything in there was double-bagged and tied shut. Whatever was in those bags, she wanted to protect. This sense of protection became very relevant because when I leaned over to look at the discount sign, I was leaning slightly closer to her pushchair. I was still about 3 feet away from it, but apparently it was too close. The woman was on the other side of the chair, but the moment she saw me, she ran around to it where I was stood. She hits me in the face. It was somewhere between a slap and a punch, and I couldn't quite tell because I was in shock. All I knew is that it hurt. Watch the personal space. She hissed in my ear, and I apologized to her. This woman just hit me, and I apologized to her. I regret it now, but at the time, I didn't want to provoke her any further. Not that I knew what I did to provoke her in the first place. And in my shock, I turned around and ran to the back area, grabbing my friend's hand and pulling her with me. The back area was separated by a tiny wall that only stretched halfway across the shop, since they stored the adult toys there and wanted to keep them out of sight of the general public. I stood there holding my friend's hand and shaking as I whispered, "She just hit me to my friend." And we stood there for a good minute in silence, and my friend was positioned in a way that she could see the rest of the store while I hid behind the wall. "She's gone," my friend told me, and a let out of breath that I didn't even know that I was holding. "Can we stay here for a while?" I asked my friend, worried that the woman would be outside waiting for me. The front of the store was open, but she could have easily just been a couple of feet down the road and out of sight, waiting for me to leave. My friend agreed, and we slowly browsed the shop again. About 5 minutes later, we got to the counter to check out, and the girl working the counter looked outside and then back at us. "That woman's been in here for 30 minutes. I didn't know what to do. She told the two of us. What did she say to you? She told me to spit out my gum when we first came in, and then she hit me because I was too close to her. She hit you." The worker was wide-eyed. "If I'd have known that, I would have called security. I'm so sorry." I smiled and shrugged. "It's fine. It wasn't really fine, but it wasn't the worker's fault. She didn't look much older than I did, and I wouldn't have known what to do in that situation either." And still shaken up, my friend and I made our way out of the store. I looked around but didn't see the woman. "Can we just go home now?" I asked my friend. We hadn't finished browsing all the shops, but I was so paranoid that we bumped into that insane woman again. She agreed, and we got the bus home. And when I got home, my parents encouraged me to report the incident to the police. And I called the non-emergency line, and their answer was basically, "Well, what do you expect us to do about it?" And unless I went back to the Ann Summers and requested the security footage, which I wasn't sure if they actually had, they wouldn't do anything. It's been just over 3 years, and now I'm sure that that woman was likely to have been homeless and or on drugs. It's the only explanation I can think of for the carrier bags and her protectiveness. It was either everything she owned or drugs, or maybe even both. Back in high school, I worked at Chuck E. Cheese, my very first job, and easily the worst one I've ever had. Even from the outside, the place gave off a grimy vibe. But what went on behind the scenes was even more unsettling. My role was basically glorified janitorial duty, trying to keep the chaos from spilling over completely. The manager couldn't have cared less about anything. The arcade machines were constantly breaking down, the play areas were falling apart, and even the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics glitched and malfunctioned more often than not. Honestly, the only reason the place stayed afloat was because it had no real competition in town. Technically, I was also supposed to help fix things, but I was way out of my depth. Most of the time, my repairs consisted of unplugging machines and plugging them back in. During the day, the place was a non-stop circus. Loud, crowded, overwhelming. But once the doors closed for the night, it was just me, alone, staying late to clean up. One night, something strange happened. I was sweeping through the arcade section when I noticed something odd inside one of the claw machines. A stuffed animal, a little white lamb, was suspended by the claw, dangling just inches above the prize chute. It struck me as strange. Why hadn't anyone said anything? Normally, a stuck win like that would have kids and parents raising hell. But by now, the place was empty. No one had come to claim it. I opened the machine, pried open the claw, and let the lamb drop back into the pile. But the second I let go, the claw snapped shut, right onto my hand. It clamped down hard, way harder than it should have, almost like it had a mind of its own. It didn't hurt much, but my hand was completely stuck for a moment. I managed to wrench my hand out. Then I shut the case and labeled the machine out of order. My heart was racing afterward. I looked around out of embarrassment, despite knowing nobody could have seen it. There was one set of eyes on me, though, so to speak. The Chuck E. Cheese animatronic just so happened to be looking right at me. It must have ended up in that position when it got turned off and then stayed like that. But it was still weird to feel like it watched me get caught up in a claw machine. Either way, the curtains should have been drawn. So I went over and closed off the stage. Then I went back to work as if nothing happened. By the time I got home, I had forgotten about the incident with the claw. But I was quickly reminded the next day I was back at work, cleaning up a protein spill near the stage. The show was going on. There were a ton of kids between me and the stage who were watching the Chuck E. Cheese animatronic move around and do its thing. Suddenly, Chuck E. started spazzing out. He malfunctioned so badly the music was skipping, and he was flailing around, contorting his joints in all sorts of positions. The kids started freaking out, and the adults were shouting. But then, after just a few seconds, the computer controlling the show finally crashed, and the whole thing stopped. The Chuck E. Cheese animatronic was frozen in an unnatural position, even for it. And once again, it just so happened to be staring right at me. I couldn't help but be even more freaked out than the night before, but I had to snap out of it and help my coworkers off the stage. There was nothing we could do for the machinery that day. I also told my manager about the claw machine, but he just waved it off and said he'd have a guy come fix it in a few days. That was par for the course for that guy, though. I stayed for the rest of my shift, and as usual, I was still there, cleaning after everyone else had gone home. I eventually went behind the curtain to sweep and mop up the stage with everything that had been going on. Being alone in that place felt even more eerie than it normally did. I made my way to center stage, where Chucky was still petrified in that creepy pose with his arms bent back and everything, which didn't help to put me at ease at all. I was just sweeping around him when I heard something. It sounded like laughter, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It actually felt like it was coming from all around me. I shouted into the store that if anyone was there, we were closed, and they had to get out. But the laughter persisted, only getting closer and closer, until it was right on top of me. I had my back turned to Chucky as I looked over the entirety of what I could see of the building, but there was nobody there. Then I heard another sound, a snap from right behind me. I turned around just in time to see Chucky break off of his mount and crash right into me. He weighed 200 pounds, slamming me right to the floor and crushing me. I panicked, screaming for help. I quickly realized that nobody would be coming for another 12 hours, and if I didn't get this thing off me, I would be in big trouble. But the animatronic machine had me pinned. I had to gather all my strength and adrenaline to finally heave the thing off of me. I got to my feet, freaked out, and checked myself for injuries. Chuck E. Cheese himself had just tried to kill me. Thankfully, I wasn't seriously injured. I just had a bunch of bruises and a messed up wrist. It wasn't broken, but it hurt like hell. Chucky fell right on it as I tried to hold him back out of reflex. I stepped outside and called my boss, telling him what happened and that I'd have to leave early. He told me to finish my shift and save the tape so he could catch me in a lie about it, just randomly falling over. I said I was too injured to work and that I'd probably need to file for workman's comp. That's when he fired me on the spot. I knew I could probably sue and get some money out of him. But at the time, I was ready to just be done with the whole thing. I still believe there was more than just neglectful management tormenting me in that place. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing video. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All right, that's it for today. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.